Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode with me, Danny. And today we will talk about a very important subject because we will do something that is quite advanced in Google Tag Manager. It's called user weather data tracking. Sounds fancy. It involves a few steps that we need to go through, and I will ensure that today's video will cover all of them. So if you're interested, the topic is basically we want to add more information about our visitors and add it to Google Analytics. And we're going to use a bunch of tools, some API calls to certain services, which I will introduce you to, and then we will use Google Tag Manager in order to push this data into Google Analytics. Quite fancy, because by the end of the day, you will be able to know the weather conditions of your users who came into your website, which is quite good because you can start thinking and analyzing your data and probably coming up with assumptions and trying to prove certain things about the effect of weather on your purchases, for example, or on your user behavior. Maybe on a rainy day, you get more visitors coming into your website because of the way you do your business or because of the way your business is set up. So, without further ado, let's start with the 6 essential steps, which we will do in this video. Obviously, step number 0 is to go and register for the API call websites. And for this, we have 2 websites. The first one is called Geoplugin.net. Excuse me, I had to look at the whiteboard because I can't remember these names. So Geoplugin.net is a very good website which will allow you to know the longitude and latitude of your users based on their IP. Obviously, you can know the user's IP in different ways, and then you can send a request to this website, and the return would be a JSON call with a JSON response with information about your user location. Could be the city. You can also get information about the longitude and latitude. And that's what we will need in order to use the other service, which is called openweathermap.org. It is a paid API. However, they do have a very good free plan, which gives you enough allocation of calls to its API. So you can, I think the cap is around 600 calls per 10 minutes, which I think for a regular website is more than enough. However, if you have a huge website with tons of traffic, then you probably need to get the paid version for that. And what the openweathermap.org website allows you to do is once you send a request with a longitude and latitude information, it will give you back again a JSON response with information about the weather of where that particular user is located, the exact temperature. You could get information in Celsius or Fahrenheit, and also you can get a general string value, which could be like cloudy or rainy or clear. So now that we got this API information out of our way, let's see our 6 steps that we need to do in order to make this happen. First, we need to create custom dimensions for our weather data. And for that, we are going to do 2 things, 2 custom dimensions. One we will call weather, which will contain values such as sunny or clear or rainy. And then we will have another custom dimension, which is called temperature. However, we are not going to push the exact temperature that we get, but what we will do is we'll try to group certain temperatures together. That way our analysis would be more useful and quicker. For example, I'm going to bundle temperatures between 0 and 5 degrees centigrade into one group, and then 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and so on. And this particular string of values will be called weather. will be called temperature. So second thing we'll do is we have to create in our own CMS, supposedly we're using WordPress, we will have to create the data layer, which is a script that we will have to put in our website, and that script will basically make the JSON calls, actually the AJAX JSON calls using jQuery to the two services that we just mentioned, get the information, and then get the data layer set up so that we can push that data into Google Analytics using Google Tag Manager. So that's around the second step, which is creating the script. Step number 3 is in Google Tag Manager. What we have to do is, first of all, we have to create the data layer custom variables, and also we have to create a cookie variable in Google Tag Manager. The reason we want to use cookies is important because we would like to only request the weather from the API once per session or once per visitor, because once per visit, because we don't want to keep making so many calls every time the user is browsing another page. So what we generally do is we would drop a cookie on the user machine once we get the data and we have it ready, and we keep it for 30 minutes or whatever duration you would think is good enough, and then would not request the API call as long as we have the cookie. But we would set an expiry on the cookie for whatever time we want, let's say 30 minutes or 1 hour, for example. Next, we need to create the trigger, which is based on an event. And the event would be weather complete, for example. So whenever our data layer is ready with the information that we need to push to Google Analytics, we will have the event as well named as weather complete, and that's when the actual trigger will be in effect, leading to the actual tag, which is in Google Tag Manager, which is an event or a custom event tag that we will create. So again, these are the steps. Let's get started. By the way, this is going to be a rather long video, so I'm assuming we can get it done in around 20 minutes, so, or maybe less, so let's see. First, let me show you the first website, which is called Geoplugincom. All you need from this website, aside from the calls that you will be doing within your script, you don't need to register. It actually provides you, and you will see here, it does provide you with a JavaScript here, as you can see that you can JavaScript.gp that you can embed into your pages so that it loads that API or that library, and then you can make the calls to get the geolocation, the longitude and latitude of your users based on their IP. The other website is openweathermap.org. Again, we talked about it. I need to register, so let me sign up quickly and show you how it's done. It's pretty simple. Create a username. I'm using it for my website, Gate30. Let's assume that this is my email. Agree to the terms of service. You can skip this, but also you can give the name of your company if you wish to. You can save it. Okay, I'm done. Now, what you need to do here is really go into your API. and read more information about what all things you can actually make use of. And you can subscribe to any one of these. I'm interested in weather stations. Let's see if I can subscribe to current weather forecasts. And then you can see here there is the Get API key and start using it. It's the free one. And as I mentioned before, it allows you to have 60 calls per minute, which is really good. And it gives you an example of how you can make the call. Now, all this is actually found in our script, which, if you would like to have access to it, you can get it by registering for a free account with webawk.com. That's where I would give you the script if you would need to use it. Now, notice here that the API call requires you to append an API ID, which is the API key here, as you can see. And this is what we need to get. So once you register for an account, you would be given a key. Let me refresh this page. I think I need to sign up. I need to log in or sign in order to be able to get the key. There it is. It's kind of tricky. You can't see it elsewhere. It's here. It says API keys. When you click here, you see that one key has been created for you by default. And this is what we will really append to our URL, the API endpoint, basically. All right. Now that this is out of our way, the next step would be to go, as mentioned before, to go to our Google Analytics, go to the admin part and start creating our custom dimensions. I do that by going to the property, scrolling down here to custom definitions and then custom dimensions. Let's see. I have already created a few in the past, so let me start by creating the new one. So as I mentioned before, these are session scoped, which means that these will be the same dimensions based on the whole session and not per page or per hit. And I have already saved the variable names here, the dimension names. So first one that I will use is custom weather, visitor weather. I like to keep the first letter lowercase here. And this is a session-based custom dimension. Save it. Be mindful, it's number 5, index number 5, so we will use it later. This is visitor weather, and now I need to add the visitor temperature. So the visitor weather would actually contain a string of a keyword that could be cloudy, sunny, rainy, etc. And the visitor temperature would contain the grouped temperatures between, let's say, 0 and 5, 5 and 10, etc. So again, the visitor temperature is of scope session and it's active, and I'm creating it. And the index is number 6. Perfect. So these are ready. That's one of the steps out of our way. Now, I need to go to my website, and I have my website ready here in WordPress. I can go to my appearance and add all of my scripts that I need. I can add them partially in the header and partially in the footer. The part that I will add in the header would include all the script calls to a jQuery library, as you can see. I already have jQuery in my WordPress instance, so I'm not going to do that. However, because we are using a jQuery cookie, which is an add-on or a plugin. You probably, depending on the version of jQuery that you have, you might need to add that as well. And I'm referencing Webhook a library here that I have because I already have it on my other website. And then we need to add the following script, which is a call to geoplugin.net, which will give us access to their library as well so that we can make the calls. So I can literally copy this and go to my header. Let's see, is this my header, first of all? Yes, it's my header. So I can add it here. I'm kind of doing it in a quick way. You, most likely, if you have a good installation, a more modular design, you would probably need to add it in the right functions. However, if you're fine, for now I'm just going to call it right here, just before the closing of the head tag in my header.php, and I'm going to save this. And then I will go into the footer page, or the footer, that's the functions. Go to footer.php, and I will grab all this piece of code. That's the magic potion. It's right here. It uses, and I'll go through it in a minute. Let me minimize this slightly, see if I can actually get a smaller. I can't, so that's fine. So the idea here is that we are making a jQuery file here, a jQuery function, which will first of all check using the jQuery cookie if a cookie with the name visitor session exists. If it doesn't, then we are going to enclose a try and catch block so that we are making sure that our code doesn't close unexpectedly and cause all sorts of problems. It's always better to do it this way. Then we are going to use the geoplugin latitude function and geoplugin longitude function to get a reference to these variables right here. And then we are going to use the other API, which is the openweathermap.org, make a REST API call into that weather service, passing in the latitude and longitude, and also having our API ID appended at the end. Let me go and get the API key for the gate30.com website. It ends with 48. Perfect. And then this is where we are parsing the temperature that we got from the API call. It's a function. It's an inner function here that is trying to group the temperatures based on multiples of 5. So this is where the logic is. And we're going to make use of this call sometime later. The function name is parseTemp. And this is nothing but an AJAX REST API call using jQuery's magic AJAX function. It's of type POST. It's a JSON-P. Again, if you don't know the difference between JSON and JSON-P, you can Google it. Basically, because we are calling a third-party website cross-domain outside of our internal domain, we need to do that. And we are also passing in to our endpoint or to our API call. We are appending the units in metrics because we want degrees Celsius. And if it's a success, again, this is where we're getting the weather and the temperature based on how the response from the JSON is set up. And you can look it up in the API documentations of openweathermap.org. And then if there was an error, we can log that error if it's complete. And that's the part that we really are interested in. we are going to create a data layer in JavaScript, just the way Google recommends, and push the information of the visitor weather, which is exactly what we just created, the custom dimension. So it should match the same name. And also, we will push the visitor temperature, the grouping of the actual temperatures in degrees Celsius. And the event that we are pushing in this case of a success is weather complete. So remember, weather complete, we're going to use it later when we create the trigger in Google Tag Manager. All right. And in case there was an error, we can also push an event of type API error. I haven't implemented that part, but you can go ahead and do it if you wish to. So this is our script. And in the end, this is the part where we are resetting the visitor session cookie every 30 minutes. Perfect. I'm copying that code. And pasting it just below the closing body tag. Looks good. All right, hit update file. Everything looks fine to me. Now we can head into Google Tag Manager and start doing the steps. First step that we need to do is to create the 2 data layer custom variables. So we go to variables, scroll down to user defined variables, click on new, and use our first variable from here. I have it ready. It's visitor weather. Can call it like this. Let's configure it. Obviously, it's a data layer variable. So this should match whatever you're pushing, the name of the variable that you're pushing. In that case, just to make it consistent with the name, it should be lowercase. And that's it. This part is done. And it's created. I'll start with the new one, which is visitor temperature. Configuring it as a data layer variable, following the same naming conventions with making the first letter lowercase, and save it. There it is. This step is done. Now we need to create the cookie variable, which could be done also in Google Tag Manager. Gonna click on you. I'm calling the cookie visitor session alive. All right. When configuring it, you have to click on first party cookie and give the cookie a name. Now, as you can tell here from my code, the cookie that I have created has the magic name of visitor session. Correct. So let's put the name here. And I believe that's it. Click on save. Our part in the variables in Google Tag Manager is complete. We've created the cookie and the 2 data layer variables. Now I move into my tags. Now I start by clicking on new. My tag name for this, let's see if I have copied it somehow. Okay. Is Google Analytic Universal Tag Weather Data. Start with the tag configuration. It's of a universal analytic type. So click on that. Using the tracking ID of my Google tracking ID. I've done that before many times. The track type for this, as we mentioned, is an event. And these are the 3 steps that you need to fill. Let's see if I have those here. Okay, I didn't copy those, but I do remember that the category is weather. The action is visitor weather, and the label is visitor temperature. And again, these are the data layer variables of Google Tag Manager. However, if we scroll down, we have to make sure that this is a non-interaction hit set to true, because we do not want to affect our bounce rate. Moving on, let's see, I need to set the custom dimensions right here. This is an important step whenever you're doing custom dimension tracking. So I need to add those 2 at custom dimension. Now, if you recall, when we created these in Google Analytics, the visitor weather had an index of 5. So I'm going to say 5, and I'm going to equate this to my visitor weather data layer variable. Add another one. Obviously number 6 corresponds to my visitor temperature. Looks good to me. Let's see. I believe this is it for the tag. Now, before I head out of here, I can actually create my trigger right away. So I'm going to click on trigger. This is the beauty of the new interface of Google Tag Manager, is you have this cascading functionalities that you can do right away without losing track of where you are. So I'm going to hit here on the plus sign to create a new trigger. And I will call my trigger Weather Complete Trigger. I like that. It's always good to make sure that trigger is there, because it helps you identifying it when you have a bunch of code that goes into Google Tag Manager. Next is trigger configuration. Going to, obviously it's a custom event. All right, so this is where we put the event name, which should match with the script, the data layer script that is pushing the information along with the event name. So whenever we match it, the particular trigger will get fired, leading to the tag being fired. I'm saving this, and I think I have everything ready by now. Well, believe it or not, we have gone through all of our steps. I have created again the tag, the trigger, the variables, the cookie. I've added my script, which will have the data layer ready with information to be pushed into Google Analytics. Now that I have everything ready, I'm going to test it. I can go here and click on Preview in Google Tag Manager, and then go to my home page and refresh it. As you can see, the Google Analytic tag weather data has been fired one time. So what I'm expecting at this point is that the data that has been collected inside of my data layer is getting pushed or has gotten pushed into Google Analytics. Now, in theory, if I refresh again, this behavior should not work because we already got that cookie set after the second refresh. Let's see. If I scroll here, I see that my weather data is now gone. My weather data tag from Google Tag Manager. Now, in order to test it further, I can go directly into my Google Analytics, go into real time, click on events. And as you can see, I have an event category of weather. The action is rain. And believe it or not, it is rainy today. So I can click on here. And I can see that my event label is that the temperature is between 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. That's great. I've tested it. I'm sure you can go ahead and do the same on your homepage if you're interested in collecting such data and matching it with your Google Analytics. It's a great way to use Google Tag Manager. And as always, subscribe to my channel and make sure you create a free account with WebAuc in order to gain more insight and have access to most of my scripts. Until a new episode, take care.